Hi there, this is Tom Ingrassia from Tom Ingrassia Images. I hope that some of you have found me. I'm just beginning my YouTube channel, and my first one was just about how to find my darn pictures in Photoshop, just super basic. And what I wanted to do, I kind of mentioned in my first video, is that I have a different philosophy. I know that when I learned Photoshop, I would get so frustrated because I'd listen to tutorials, I'd read books, I would pop up DVD in my computer, and the people that were teaching are very talented, much more talented than me. But I noticed that it was confusing. They either went too fast or they made assumptions that I'm like, what are you talking about? So what I am trying to do with my channel is to provide some how-to tutorials on Photoshop that really take things easy, slow, maybe repeat things just to make sure you really understand it. And based on your comments, we'll see if I'm successful. So let's do this. This is just a real introduction to layers. And I remember I was just baffled by layers. I kind of understood them, but I was confused. So what I want to go through is a description of layers. We'll take a look at this picture. This is a young man that was in Sicily, in Palermo, the streets of Palermo. I was there probably 8 or 9 years ago and got this picture. So we'll use this picture as our sample, and we'll talk about layers. All right. The first thing that we want to think of is that I want you to just imagine this. Let's say you've got a paper print of this gentleman right here, and you lay it on a table, okay? And above that print, let's say an inch above it, you put a piece of clear glass, okay? And we're going to call that a layer, okay? And at first, and you're looking down through the layers, okay, at the picture. So when I put the picture down on the table and I'm looking down at it, I see the picture, looks good, okay? I put a piece of glass 1 inch over that picture. It's clear glass, looks the same, no big difference. And I can put more and more layers of glass, and if they're all clear, assuming they're 100% clear, there's no change, right? I just look down through the glass and I see the picture and nothing changes. But the way to think about layers is to think of them as clear plates of glass, but you can change that clear glass to it's unlimited, really. So you can make that glass tinted. You can make that glass completely black and black out everything. You can make that clear glass produce a brightness shining down on the picture. You can make that another layer project a darkness coming down, a dodging, what we used to say in the old darkroom days. So that's just one way to kind of describe all the many things you can do with layers. But the beauty of layers is that they're non-destructive, and non-destructive is basically saying that when you make a change to your picture with a layer, you're not really changing the actual pixels on your base picture in Photoshop. And so you can get out of it, you can make mistakes, you can experiment, and you can uncheck the layer, and its effect will go away. So again, just to imagine that we've got this picture, you see it on your screen, I see it on my screen, but pretend like it's laying flat on a table. And let's say we're going to put 3 or 4 pieces of glass above it, okay? And they're just an inch above each other. And for right now, all those layers that we've added above our picture are just plain clear glass, okay? And just think that with Photoshop, for each of those layers, you can have some sort of an effect. And again, I could make brightness. I could make things darker, okay? So. And then the main thing to think of is that you're always on top looking down through all the layers onto the picture. And you're seeing the effect of all those layers reflecting back to you, okay? So hopefully this kind of makes sense. So let's just kind of get started, on this to talk more about layers actually when they're in Photoshop. All right, so here's this gentleman. And one thing that is probably just good practice to do is when you're working with a document is to just copy the layer. It's just a good practice, and the one way to do that is actually we're going to make a layer, and the layer is going to be literally just taking another picture, that exact same picture, and just putting it right on top of the other one. That way you've always got one at the base that's never affected, and then you've got another one that you can kind of work on and practice with. Okay, so the way to do this is to, if you're on a PC, to press down the Control key and J. Okay, and if you've got a Mac, it would be let's see, I guess it'd be oh gosh, I'm not a Mac guy. It's sorry, Command, right, for Mac. Okay, so we've copied our picture. All right, so now we're going to just go through and we're going to add some layers, and we're going to make some nice effects to this picture. All right, so one thing that I want to do is, let's see here. We are going to add a layer, another layer, and let's add a layer that is for, oh, let's say brightness. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to my palette down here, my layers palette, and right down here where you see this little circle with half light and half dark, we're going to click on that, and up comes a whole bunch of different options, and we're just going to say brightness contrast. Okay, not the best, most powerful layer in Photoshop, but let's just try brightness and contrast. So we click on that, and guess what? We've got a layer, and you notice that we see two things. We see this little sun that looks like a little brightness icon, and then we see this white. Okay, and what this means is that when you see all that white, it means that, you know what, that white is letting everything shine through it. So that's like, the white is basically like a clear piece of glass. All right, and so if you want to make some sort of an effect, if you, in other words, if you're going to be looking down through that layer of glass that right now white is clear, and you want something to change, let's say we're going to brighten up some area of the scene. What we're going to do is we'll click over here to the brightness. Okay, and then now you see the little outline there. That means that we're able to now affect or change the brightness. So again, the white means that it's clear, there's no effect. Okay, so we're looking down on the picture, and we're looking through this white, which is clear glass, onto this picture, and then underneath the picture, this layer right here is completely blocking the one underneath, right? Okay, we're just kind of protecting the background layer. So now we've got this layer here, and it's white, and it means it's clear glass, is doing nothing. Well, we want to do something. We want to brighten something up. Okay, so we click over here, and that means, see, if I click back to the clear glass, you see how you see these little outlines here? All right, and it says brightness contrast. That's the description of the layer. And if I click right to the left, notice how the little outlines are bright there. So that just tells you that, oh, I'm on the brightness area. And guess what? If you want to change the brightness, you can go up to the Properties tab, and you see, oh, look, brightness and contrast. I've got a choice for brightness. I've got a choice for contrast. And I'm going to just take my brightness up a little bit. We're going to be kind of dramatic. Let's say 30. Okay, so that's a lot brighter than it was before. All right, so if I go back to my brightness and contrast layer, you notice that this clear glass now is actually not totally clear. It's actually putting brightness down onto my picture. All right, so it's almost like a little flashlight that you can see through, and this little layer, based on your setting with the brightness tab, the brightness palette, is just sending light onto the picture. So the brightness affects everything, right? When you look at it, if I click right here, you see this little eye here? This basically turns off the layer. So let's turn that off. I click on it, and it's off. Okay, so there's my picture as usual. Okay, and I added, remember, I went down here, and I added a layer. I went click, and I added a brightness contrast layer. Okay, I'll click out of there, and it came up as this. And we noticed that the white was just a clear piece of glass. This little icon over here just meant that when you want to change that clear piece of glass to either darker or lighter, or more contrast or less contrast, click over here, and then remember we came up to here and we went brightness up. Okay, so that's going to make the whole scene brighter. And if you go over here to this little icon, this little spot here, if I click back, now I see the eye again. When you see the eye, it means that the effect's taking place. So we've got brightness, right? Now, let's say that now we're on our filter or on our layer, which is white, which means that it's clear, or if we've got something added to it, when we went over here and we added some brightness, now our layer, our clear piece of glass is actually making a change into the picture because it's kind of sending down some brightness, some light onto the picture. Okay, right? But here's the problem. Let's say we don't want brightness everywhere. I mean, I only want brightness let's say I only want brightness on this little rock over here, behind here. I just want to brighten that up a little bit, all right? So here's a dilemma. It's like, well, I brightened up the whole picture, but I don't want the whole picture brightened up, okay? So what I think is the best way to do this is that, remember I'm on my layer here, and remember we went to the little brightness icon. We went up here, we made things bright, okay? I'm going to come back down to my layer, and again, remember that this is that piece of glass that's based on our setting is kind of shining light down onto the picture, making it bright, but it doesn't distinguish anything. It just shines brightness on every single pixel of the picture. And I want to distinguish. I want to just only put brightness on a certain part of the layer of the picture, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my little white layer here, my piece of glass that's shining down, adding brightness, and I'm going to invert it. In other words, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to just turn it off, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to press Control and then I, okay? Control I or Command I. I'm going to invert it. And so now what I'm doing is that I'm clear glass. Remember, I was clear glass, then I added an effect. I added the brightness, and that brightness was shining down on my picture because the little palette right here was white. But I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to block the effect. I'm not going to block my view down at the picture. I can still see down through the filters onto my picture, but that brightness that I added, I want to just block that. So the way to do that is I want to press Control or Command and I for invert, and I'm going to block that out. Okay. Now what I can do, either with my mouse, a brush with my mouse, or with a tablet. And if you guys don't have a tablet, maybe I'll make another video in the future that talks about how great a tablet is. But I'll show you. You can use your mouse, and we are literally going to paint where we want that brightness to be. All right. So if you have a mouse, you can use your mouse. I have a tablet. I'm going to use my tablet. Okay, here's my tablet. I can see my little cursor going around here. And what I want to do is I want to choose the tool that's a brush. And to choose your tool that's a brush, guess what? You press B for brush. Okay, so there's my brush. And what I'm going to do is, you notice how, remember, we've got this that it's black. So we added the layer. It was white. We went to the little brightness setting and we brightened it up, right? And it shone down and it made the picture bright. But we want to negate that effect because now we want to only add that effect to certain areas. So here's what's neat. It's almost like, think of that layer as a piece of glass, and we had that effect, right? That brightness effect, but we're going to just take away that brightness effect and add it back in only where I brush. So it's almost like thinking that we've got something blocking the brightness. And we're going to just kind of brush away that blockage with a brush. We're going to brush away what's blocking our brightness, and it's going to let only the brightness go down onto the picture where we've brushed that blockage away. That makes sense? All right. So that black means that we're blocking our effect. Okay. And I'm going to take my brush, and what I'm going to do is you notice here that you see opacity and fills 100%. That's just, we'll talk about that in a minute. That's just normal. Okay, and my brush, if we go up here, my brush way up at the top left here is set at 100, and it's set at hardness of 0. We'll talk about that maybe later. It's just a plain old brush, and it's very soft. Okay, it means that it's not going to be a real hard defined edge. It's just a real soft brush. All right, so if you look down at our tools, right down here, you see two little things. You see a white and you see black, all right? And white and black mean either, look over here, see black means it's going to subtract, okay? Remember how we added the layer, we added the effect, We turned up the brightness. You saw the picture get bright, but now we wanted to negate that, so we press Control I to invert it. So now that all that brightness effect is being blocked by the blackness. Okay, it doesn't mean that I can't see through my layer. It just means I can see through the layer, but the effect that I had to make things bright, I'm just blocking only that. And so now I'm going to use a brush with, guess what color I'm going to use to unblock that. I'm going to use a brush that's white. So when I use a brush that's white, and I'm going to draw on the picture on my blackness here. Okay, so this black little palette, remember, that's blocking my effect. So if I paint on that, on the picture, when I've got this selected, my paintbrush is going to basically just kind of think of it brushing away the blocking to let that brightness come through. All right, so let's do it. Let's go over here, and I'm not going to do anything fancy, but I've got my brush. And by the way, if you want to make your brush bigger or smaller, if you want to make it bigger, click on the right bracket. There it goes. Okay, and then the left bracket. This is the one that's on my keyboard. It's right to the right of the P. P as in Paul. I've got bigger and smaller, so I can adjust that. Okay, now let's go about there. And I'm just going to brush and watch what happens. See what happens? See, I'm brightening that up. So again, what I'm actually doing is I am unblocking the effect that I blocked. So again, I created a layer that was an adjustment layer. It was the brightness and contrast layer. I turned up the brightness and you saw the effect. Remember, we saw that effect, right? I took that brightness effect and I negated it by pressing Control I. I inverted it. I inverted the effect. I kind of blocked it out. I didn't block my vision through my layers of the picture. I just blocked out that effect. I took that effect and I said, just turn it back to 0. Okay? And I blocked it with my little blackness there. Now, if you look over here, Photoshop actually shows you where you've unblocked your effect. See where that white is over here? Where my mouse is? That's where I've actually brushed the blocking of the effect away, and now that effect is coming through and it's able to shine through that blocking and affect my picture only where I wanted it to. So if you look here, I'm going to brighten this up down here, and you see what I'm saying? I'm just going to brighten up the brick there a little bit. You can kind of see it. Okay. Now to make it a lot more dramatic, if you want to see it, I can, let's say I'll brighten his shoes. Okay, I'm going to brighten his shoes. See, his shoes are getting brightened there. Okay, so there we go. So again, I remember I was confused. I hope you're not confused. I hope this really makes sense. But let's just go over this one more time. We opened the picture. Here, we're going to go back here. We're going to go back into our history. So we opened the picture. And then what do? We made a copy. How did we make a copy? We went to Control and J for Joe. Okay, or that would be Command J on the Mac. And boom, we made a copy. And we made a copy just because you always want to kind of just protect your background copy. Everybody pretty much does it. Okay, so now we've got a copy that we're going to work on. And what did we do next? We wanted to get a new layer, a brightness layer, a brightness contrast layer. So what did we do? We went down to here. I'm going to go back. Okay, so we went down to here, and we clicked on this, and we clicked on brightness contrast, and then the layer was added above our picture. Remember that? So I'm just going to go forward in my history, and we'll maybe talk about that later. But so there's my brightness and contrast. And then remember what I did? This layer means that, just think of it as a clear piece of glass above your picture. So you're looking through a clear piece of glass. So we haven't done anything yet. We've got a layer ready to go, but it doesn't affect the picture yet. Okay, but we clicked on the type of layer to be a brightness contrast effect because we wanted to brighten something up. All right, so on the layer it says brightness contrast. We've got our little white box there, and we've got our actual effect box. So when we click over here where that little brightness guy is, and we go up to where that effect is up here, remember we kind of took our brightness and we went bright. Ooh, boy, look how bright that is. Wow. Okay, so we did that. And we thought to ourselves, you know what? That's that's not really what we want. We want to brighten up the picture, but we only want to brighten certain parts. So that's a dilemma, right? Well, not really. What you do then is that we want to negate that effect. We want to kind of block it. We still want it to be able to use it, but we want to block it. So we go to our white little block there, our little layer there, and we press Control or Command and the letter I for invert. Okay, so now what we've done, let's go over this again. We still have our layer. It's still a clear piece of glass. We added that brightness effect, so that layer was like shining extra brightness down on our picture. And now we said, you know what, we're going to block it. So magically, our layer, we've just taken away all that brightness, and it's still there, but we've just blocked it. And now we want to add back some of that brightness, but we only want to add it to certain parts of the picture. So what do? We go to our little palette here. Remember, it was white before and everything was affected. That white means it's full effect. Black means we've hidden that effect. Okay, so we go back here and we're going to brush in where we want the brightness to be with a brush. And guess what? If we've got the black here that's hiding everything, our effect, we have to use a brush that gets rid of the black, and we use a white brush. So we go to brush, we press B for brush, and if you look at our tools palette, and by the way, if you don't happen to have your tools palette, you can go to window. You can go to window up here, and you're going to look for tools, and you want to make sure that those are clicked on. See how mine's clicked? And if I unclick it, ooh, shoot, my tools are gone. So I go up to window, and I click on tools. There they are. And brush, just so you know, is this guy here. So you can either click on it, or you can press B and it'll automatically go. Okay, so now I've got a brush, and now I'm thinking, okay, Tom, what color's my brush? Because I need a white brush. How do I get a white brush? Well, here's the little brush color, and right now it's set to either white or black, and see that little reversal arrow there? Okay, now it'd be a black brush, and if I use a black brush now, what's going to happen? Well, nothing, because I blocked my effect by making it black. If I paint black on black, that's not going to change anything, right? So I made my effect, my brightness effect. I made the whole picture bright. Ugh, I don't like that. The whole picture's bright. I'm going to block it, right? And I blocked it by pressing Control or Command and then I to make this little guy over here black. And what happened? Remember that? Well, here, let's do it. Let's go to Control I. We're going to convert it back. Ooh, brightness, way too much. It's just brightness on the whole picture, because this white means that the effect is going to shine through. So I want to turn off that effect. I still want to have it available, but I turn it off. So what do? Control I. That turns it off. It blocks it. Now I want to add it back, but only where I brush. Okay. So how do I get rid of the blockage? I use a white brush. Okay. And so we know our tools are here. I can either click on my brush, or I can press B for brush. And then if I look down here, my little color swatches here. Right now the one on top is black, so that's not what I want, because if I paint black on black, nothing happens. If I click on this and reverse it, now I've got a white brush, and now I can paint on my picture. And what I'm actually doing, I'm actually just removing the blockage of my brightness effect from my picture, from that layer. Okay, so here's what I do. So remember this? So I'm gonna go brightness, brightness. Not that it really needs it, but I'm just using this as an example. And remember, so I just kind of brush around here. You can use your mouse or use your tablet. And let's take his shoes and make his shoes a little bit brighter. They're brighter. Okay, see that? Now look over here. Look over here to my layer, to the brightness contrast layer. So what did I do? I added a layer. Remember it? I added a layer from down here. I went click. I added brightness and contrast, and this popped up. This layer popped up. And I saw this, and then this black thing here was all white. Remember, it was all white, and everything in the picture was really bright. So I went to Control I. Okay, I'm going to do this again. Control I. It was all white. So I'm like, oh no, I don't want that. I want to block that effect for now. Control I. And now I want to add it back only to certain parts. So what do? I took my brush, my white brush, and just think of your white brush as literally just kind of like moving off all the black that's blocking the brightness effect. So what did I do? I kind of painted around here, and I've got my brightness. There we go. All right. So there's a very, very basic introduction to layers. I know I might have been, well, I meant to be repetitive, but hopefully you kind of get it. And thanks for watching my video. Please subscribe and please give me a thumbs up. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.